Welcome, everyone, to the Star Trek Discovery After Show. Thanks to everybody who jumped right over from the Marvel movie talk we were doing about all the crazy Marvel news we have here. I'm Christian Bladt. So very excited to be talking Star Trek Discovery right afterwards with our friend Nikki Bailey. Hi, Nikki.
Hey, y'all.
So, Nikki, a few episodes have gone by since the last time you were with us. So I wanted to just give you a moment, just sort of where you feel the season has gone as we get to this episode 9, Terra Firma Part 1.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie to you, Christian. I don't understand where the season has gone, and I feel like I'm mad that I wasn't here. I didn't get to join you and Flobo for the conversation about last week's episode. I was so annoyed with the big deal that they made over the they gender thing.
Yeah.
Are we still in 1,000 years still dealing with gender as an issue? What?
Well, yeah, because I mean that was one of those Gene Roddenberry beliefs when it came to Next Generation, was that gender really wasn't going to be an issue, and this was in 1987. He had this idea,
I mean,
and so the 31st century. Well, I mean, I guess technically, Stamets is from 1,000 years earlier, but still, even at that point, but
they should have been over it by now. It shouldn't have been a discussion.
Yeah.
And I literally paused, got up out of my chair, walked around my room, stomped my feet, and was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? 1,000 years in the future, and people still have to have the they, them, she, her, he, that, he, him conversation." Yeah. So that really pissed me off. But I love where the relationship between Stamets and Adira is going. Yeah. I love that sort of parent-child dynamic that they're creating there. I really loved. I really am so vibing with what's going on with Georgiou.
Yeah, for sure.
And I am fascinated. I find myself fascinated by Commander Vance. Admiral
Vance. Yeah.
And he's so unexpected. Like I feel like, just when you think he's going to be, and I'm thinking Saru's having a hard time reading him too, because like just when you think exactly what, just when you think what kind of guy he is, he switches it up on us. So I'm enjoying Admiral Vance. I'm enjoying that he's willing to take risks on Discovery. I'm enjoying that he's mentoring Saru as a captain. And I am loving Tilly as first officer. Now, we thought that was going to be all kinds of wrong. We thought that there was no possible way. We thought that was going to be a huge mistake. But when dude walked in and she was like, try again with the respect that he's due. Yeah. I was like, okay, that's some Terran Tilly right there. Yeah. That's some Captain Killy coming out.
Right, exactly.
I'm very excited about that.
I agree. I think Admiral Vance has been a bit of a surprise, especially from when we met the character, the first episode that he was in, which I think was the 3rd episode of the season. And I think that he has been full of surprises. He's been more apt to, make the not obvious decision, as he talked to Saru about in this episode, because he doesn't want to have regrets and sort of the value on looking out for your crew. So I think that he's been a pleasant surprise. And Flobo and I talked last week a lot about the Stamets and Adira relationship. I think is great, and I think that it's the perfect person for Adira to be able to open up to, as we talked about, just because it's like, he has the partner who literally died.
Yeah.
And it's something that most people can't relate to. And I don't know, I think it really has opened up the character of Stamets as well, just to have Adira as a foil to play off of.
And what I love too is that they have a place where they connect, in that they both lost partners. They also have a place where they connect in that in our time period, they would both be members of the same community, just based on their sexual orientation. And so as a queer person myself, my thought is, I love how even in the future, we still make our own families. queer people still make our own families. And so I was though kind of like annoyed with the they them conversation. Like that should have been, even if it was a conversation that had to be had, we didn't need to see it. If it's 1,000 years in the future, we should be over it, and it shouldn't. And it would have been a much bigger statement to me had they not said anything about it and just allowed Adira to be a they them.
Yeah,
So,
no, I think that, yeah, that would have that would have been more impactful. I saw that as a moment that was for us. I don't mean you and I, for the viewer in 2020.
yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, they felt like this was a good way to establish that. Yeah, but it sort of had that reverse effect of like, so really the 31st century, this is
Right,
still where that's at.
exactly. Yeah, I understood why they did it, but it just
Yeah.
it kind of bugged me.
No, yeah.
Now,
Go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say now in this my overview of this episode.
Yes.
Well, first of all, everybody in the Terran universe is sexier than in
100%.
Just sexier, more interesting. I would
Even-
rather be watching a show about this crew in the Terran universe
Yeah.
than what we are watching now.
Yeah, Bryce has never been more interesting than when he's getting his face stomped in.
I'm just saying though, like we know his name now though, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's a great point.
I mean, so and I'm wearing this blue lipstick because I don't have black lipstick, and I was so feeling Michael in her black lipstick. I was like, I was like, oh my gosh, the podcast is in 3 minutes. I need black lipstick, and my partner's like, there's the okay, no, just. But I loved everybody. I loved being in that world, and I also loved Carl.
Yeah, and I love Michael B's comment. Dom Tilly is
yes.
Awesome. I do love Killy. Since we first saw her in season 2, I think we've all wanted more Killy. But yeah, finally getting to see the Mirror Universe Michael, I thought was great. And I don't know how they have her pretend old haircut. That I'm just like, I don't even understand how they do that.
The hair that she's wearing right now, the braids, that's a wig.
Yeah, I know.
And you can, and I know that for men, this is probably mind blowing. Yeah, no, it's a wig with a lace front that you can't see, but because they use her baby hairs to cover it. But I am always unhappy with her hair. So always unhappy with her hair.
So going back to season 1 episode.
So going back to season 1 hair, I'm just still unhappy with it.
Yeah.
But I am very happy with her black lipstick. I like her. I think even as a performer, as an actor, Sonequa plays this sort of Terran Michael much better than she plays, our Michael. Like I feel like that villainous version is so much more interesting. There's so much more nuance. There's so much more there. And even watching Georgiou navigate what she's learned in our universe and how that affects her in this new universe. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I was happy with the I was happy with something happening with Georgiou. I still have so much to say about the old episodes too, about the last 2 episodes too.
That's
but
right. I mean, especially as it relates to Georgiou, and William Walton says, maybe we get a spinoff set in the Mirror Universe. I would welcome that. I did really enjoy that. I like the way that they figured out how to get our whole cast of regulars in there.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that we still got Saru and sort of the way that they worked that in. Look, this is, I think it's been building throughout the season, and I think a lot of times with a show like this, and honestly, we felt that in this season. It's like, well, we're kind of getting away for what the primary focus is.
Yeah.
But giving if you look it up, that Terra Firma is a 2-part episode. So giving 2 episodes to Michelle Yeoh for Georgiou, Emperor Georgiou, to deal with what's going on with her, I'm going to be okay with it because the execution was so good.
It was.
I really want more of like, well, tell us more about the Emerald Chain, and weren't we about to find out about the burn?
Right.
But
it's not as interesting. It's just not.
I mean, this was fascinating. So,
Yeah.
I think that's really what it came down to. And yeah, I agree with you. I really was just the sort of way that they didn't explain Carl. He's just sitting there in the snow reading his newspaper, and he's like, "Yeah, why don't you go through that door?"
And
You
it was
know?
he was very I don't know if you watched The Good Place. He was very much
Yeah,
the guy who guards the door to Earth,
yeah,
who has the frog obsession. So like,
yep,
I really liked Carl. I liked the mysticism too of that of the whole, like, what is Carl? What is that door? That seemed like a sort of a spiritual journey, kind of like, I come from this, my background is, I studied theology, and so for me, that door and the sort of the symbolism of walking toward the door and walking in the door, um to me spoke a lot to the seeker's journey in terms of faith and theology, and like, what is it that she needs to fix inside herself to be whole again, and she has to walk this journey. And I'm like, woo, that is some powerful preaching for some
yeah.
Star Trek, boy.
Yeah, no, I think that we're just getting to see how complex she is. And look, we've known, especially as the season's gone along, but ever since we met this version of Georgiou, we know that whatever happened between her and Michael was definitely a sore spot for her. And the fact that she's now going to reason through how to see if she can work it out, and by making a different decision, do things go better? It's like, well, instead of beheading her, let's put her in the agonizer. And the expectation that I have is that ultimately she's going to have to make the same decision in next week's episode, and
I
it's
agree.
probably that realization that's going to help her just come to terms with it. It's like, no, I had to kill her. Remember, her whole plan was to overthrow you and have you murdered, but to make Stamets do the dirty work. I was like, really?
Ooh, right?
Nobody better? I mean,
Well, to me, I felt like it did feel a little like, why is Stamets the one narrating this play, this weird tableau play thing they were doing? And then for him to be the one to stab her, I was like, uh, I don't know, like, part of me felt like he was a great choice in that he would be the least, like, from our Stamets would be the one who would be least likely to be involved
yeah,
in anything like that. But also, like, he also wasn't good at it. Like,
no, no,
like,
yeah,
he had a knife behind his back, and you have to admit, you have to believe in the Terran universe. People kind of are aware of that dynamic. That if somebody's got their hand behind their back, they're probably got a knife or something. So
yeah.
yeah.
I want to backtrack to Carl for a second because Michael says, "Is Carl a Q?" And Craig Robinson says
Ooh.
immediately, "Yes." That would make a lot of
Ooh, that
sense.
would make so much sense.
But I think that if he is a Q, he has some sort of specific duty in the universe, maybe
Yeah.
dealing with the mirror universe. Maybe
Yeah.
he is a mirror universe Q,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, I think it's a great observation, and that's obviously the best part of it. And yeah, I think she figured that Michael figured that Philippa wouldn't see Stamets
Yeah.
coming,
Agreed.
but that's the problem is, look, Anthony Rapp is a stage actor, so he telegraphed, "I am about to stab you." And
He really, really did. And what's funny is that, like, there are moments where I think about him, this is not Broadway. Bring it down, dude. Like bring it down. And if you're not someone who, if you're not a trained actor, there's a difference between how you perform on stage versus television versus film. Like, there are differences. And so, like, and you have to know how to do it differently. And Anthony Rapp got famous being in the original cast of Rent.
yeah,
So he's a big actor, and
yeah,
so is, I mean, for that matter, so is Culber, so is
yeah.
um
Wilson Cruz
Wilson Cruz. Although
for My
Wilson
So-Called
Cruz,
Life.
I was gonna say, although Wilson Cruz was in my all-time fave, My
Yeah.
So-Called Life. I mean, come on, like, sorry, that's a whole other
But
podcast. We need to do a
when it
podcast about My So-Called
about My
Life,
So-Called Life, a rewatch.
a rewatch.
The thing about Anthony Rapp, sometimes it's a lot of facial expressions where you're like, oh, that one was for people in the back of the balcony. you know.
Right.
But he's tremendous. And I've been saying, like, I couldn't believe that he'd never sang on this show. And while he still hasn't, we now
Like
had
the
him playing
piano.
music with Adira. So I'm like, all
We
right.
know he's musical. I actually, when he started playing, I went 525,600
Yeah.
minutes. And my,
Eh,
yeah, my partner was like, shut up. She's,
yeah.
I
What
was
if he'd
like,
gone to get the scarf, you know?
right. I'm just saying, I just
Yeah.
expected there to be a Mark moment in
Yeah,
there.
just
So
right there on the holodeck, you know, would have been perfect. But anyway, yeah, I think that it is interesting how they were able to incorporate, you know, our characters from Discovery into this mirror universe. You know, and we caught a glimpse of a lot of this when we hadn't seen Michael in season 2.
right.
There's all this talk of Lorca. I honestly expected us to see Jason Isaacs, and maybe we'll see him next week. But I was just like, well, this is kind of a missed opportunity because I don't know. I thought he was a great character, you know, and it was sort of one of the ultimate heel turns, as Flobo would say, when you realize, you know, just that who this guy really was midway through season 1. I don't know. I would have certainly been up for seeing him again, you know.
I agree, and I think that I'm hoping that he's going to be in this next episode, because I feel like otherwise this won't be real. Whatever, like I don't know if what Giorgio is experiencing now is real. Giorgio is feeling is this real, or is this something that she has to envision for herself so that she can heal from it? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I do agree with you that ultimately she is going to have to kill Michael. But I'm like, is she going back in time to do this, or is this something like sort of an experience that's been created for her by Carl to help her heal? And so, yeah, that makes me wonder.
I think it is interesting, and my feeling is that she did not actually go back in time. She's not actually living it. It is a simulation based largely on her memories. But you know, obviously, if Carl is a Q, it's not difficult at all for him
the time travel, and right,
yeah.
like he would have been able to do it. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
And I also wondered too if this gives us an opportunity to let Michelle Yeoh leave this show and this season so that she can go off and do Sector
Section 31.
Section 31.
And yeah, I thought that during the course of this episode, I'm like, so I thought that, first of all, great to see David Cronenberg again. And the explanation he had is that her body is trying to go, you know, it's getting torn because it's trying to go back to her dimension, but also back
to her time. Right.
Yeah. And I think to me, that says that ultimately what they're going to have to do is look the other way for sort of these time travel accords and send her back. And then that would set her up for the Section 31 show that, you know, she was rumored to be a part of.
Exactly.
But, you know, just to sort of not go too off on a tangent, if they were to do that, would you want to see her in the Mirror universe, or would you want to see her in the Prime universe?
Well, she couldn't be Sector 31 in the Prime universe, in the Mirror universe. So she'd have to stay in the Prime universe. That said, I'd much rather see a show about the Mirror universe, just in general. Like sex, I don't know. I like Section 31. They can do what they want with that. But give me Mirror universe Star Trek show. I am there for it. This is the other thing I wanted. One other thing I wanted to remember to say to you about the last episode.
Sure.
Was the whole Star Wars Death Star reenactment situation. Did you not get those Star Wars vibes when the pilot chick took Rin to? I don't know if that was the last episode or the
that was the last episode. Yeah.
So I was like, what? I was like, is this Luke Skywalker trying to find that one little spot in the freaking Death Star again?
Yeah, and we talked about this. I talked about this with Flobo that when she does manual, it's like, okay, so it's like a video game controller,
right? It totally was. Yeah. Okay, that was it. I think I'm done with all of my referring back.
It all feeds together, and I think that that's look. I don't know. I think it's important, and it's when you have those moments when they sometimes feel. And yeah, look, it's one of the things that people sometimes criticize Discovery and criticize the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, is that they're a little bit too much like Star Wars. But usually when they say that, it's after like a kind of a cool fight sequence,
a cool Star Wars thing.
Yeah. And it's like, look, Star Trek was predominantly a television series. I'm talking about the original series, TNG,
right,
Deep Space Nine, Voyager. So they're always going to be primarily constrained by television budgets. You think they wouldn't have loved to have done stuff like this? Let's just throw out the original series in this one sense. But you think in Next Generation, they wouldn't have wanted it to be like Star Wars, So the fact that they can do it now, I don't know. It's why I like the show so much, because they aren't held back, and they, look, because of international licensing, they get a lot of money from Netflix for the rest of the world. I think it's $3 million an episode, and it usually shows up on the screen.
That's true. It's true. I have to say, I am not as much of a Wars fan as I am a Trek fan, and I've always felt like Star Wars was this, it was just basically this battle between good and evil. That's great, blah blah blah. But what I've always loved about Star Trek was the philosophy and the theology that, like, the theology may not be obvious to everybody, but that's part of what I was watching for, the philosophical perspective. And so for me, when the Star Trek starts to get too Star Warsian, I get a little like,
yeah. Well, Picard with the eye patch in the bar is
that was way too Star Warsian. Yes.
So I agree. I thought that this was really cool. I liked getting to see Detmer. I think that they're actually doing some interesting stuff with her this season. And, we kind of talked about at the beginning of the season. They're like, all right, well, look, we still have to service all of our main characters and the new characters. We're going to take one supporting character and give her stuff to do this year. And it's Detmer this year. So, next year, maybe it's Bryce if he gets his face stomped in again. But
seriously, I mean, I'm sure that he's probably like, his family had a party. They were probably like, they're like, he was probably like, guess how much screen time I'm getting this episode? Oh my god.
Yeah, just watch me get beat up. It's going to be amazing. I think that dealing with the mirror universe. And there's great episodes of DS9. Back on I think it was on the old Star Trek Weekly show we did for AfterBuzz. Frank, Carey, and myself. Between seasons, we did a lot of mirror universe stuff, and we did one on all the DS9 episodes. There's I think the last the third and second from the end episodes of Enterprise all dealt with the mirror universe, and they didn't even.
I didn't finish Enterprise, as you know.
No, I didn't either. I actually only watched them because I was doing that show, and I felt like, I should check it out. I did watch the final episode of Enterprise because it's so infamous for the way that it ended.
I don't even know. Now I have to watch the end of it. Ugh.
Yeah, you should just watch that. Just give it, just carve out those like 42 minutes, and you'll be like, oh, this is why everybody hates the way it ended.
Okay,
we'll leave it at that. But let me know once you've done. So
Michael B's comment about if Georgia goes back to her time, she can cross over to the Prime universe. She can warn them about Control and the Burn.
I mean, that's interesting. I actually hadn't thought about it. She could sort of be like, I use this allegory a lot. It's the letter that Doc Brown writes to Marty in 1885 and then gets delivered 100 years later by the guy who works for the post office. So she can be like, all right, this is a bit of information you're going to need 900 years from now.
Yeah.
But he also, Michael B says, could Carl be the type of character Whoopi was in Next Generation? Because I can't see Q caring
about humans. About humans.
And look, our John Delancey Q, I 100% agree. He cares about Picard in a way because he's fascinated by him.
Yeah, it wasn't like a care for human beings or for the species or whatever. It was a fascination with Picard, definitely.
Yeah, but so that doesn't mean that Carl couldn't be a Q who is interested in humans, and again, I feel like sort of some kind of guardian of the mirror universe. So look, we get the interesting characters. Just to finish the thought, we have Carl, we have David Cronenberg, we have these like fascinating side characters where I'm like, I'd spend another couple scenes with Carl finding out about him.
Totes. I would totes, and the idea of maybe Carl could be whatever Whoopi was, whatever Guinan
Whatever
was.
Guinan was, yeah.
And I love that to my knowledge, I don't think we ever find out what Guinan is, right? Like we never really get like she gives us only sort of vague clues about her history and her people. We don't ever really get to understand exactly who she was, only that she's super, super old.
And because we see her in the TOS timeline in Generations.
Exactly. And,
we see her, looking no older in Next Generation. And she's I believe all but confirmed for season 2 of Picard. So maybe we'll learn more about it. And so, this could be an interesting way to tie into Guinan's story. So I do hope we get an answer and that Carl just doesn't disappear. And it was like, who was that guy with the newspaper,
I think that actor, whose name I had in my brain just minutes ago and is now gone, is known enough that like he's probably not a one-off guest star on this show. Like he's a recognizable enough guy that you would think they'd bring him back.
Yeah,
I mean, like for instance,
recognize it too.
Steven Cronenberg, you're not going to just have him come on one episode unless although. I mean, he does sort of have a habit of kind of showing up in one episode of a lot of different things. So I don't know. But he always plays a doctor or something, doesn't he? It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think that is definitely the good role for what he is. I'll see if I can figure out that actor's name, but I don't want to get too bogged down on it. Michael B. again. I remember on Voyager.
I remember that.
Got humans and wanted to die. So I think that. I don't know how many Q we've met overall. I remember Corbin Burnson from LA Law playing a Q, and that's the only.
That.
Yeah, that's the only other one that stands out because there's the Q continuum, and you don't necessarily know this as well as Frank did, because I did Star Trek Discovery seasons 1 and 2 with Frank, so Frank got to hear me vent about Star Trek. I am not a huge fan of Q. Because to me, Q is magical.
I know. I've heard
that. Okay, good.
I've heard your.
It's always good to reiterate that I don't think magic belongs in Star Trek. Magic belongs in Star Wars because you have Jedi and you have all that. I don't think it works really well, but I did always I thought John Delancey was fantastic. The interactions he would have with Sir Patrick Stewart on those episodes were always great, especially the one where he lets him kind of relive his life, and it's a Wonderful Life, Jean-Luc. That's probably, to me, that's the one standout Q episode for me that I really, really liked. But
it wasn't Encounter at Farpoint?
No. Although I'm going to be honest, I'm not a huge cosplay person, but if I had unlimited budget, the sort of the Q headdress and the robes, I would definitely rock that at San Diego.
I could see that.
But it'd probably be a little warm in San Diego in July, but that's
probably.
So the episode in and of itself, we, for the most part, we really focus on the mirror universe, and it does end in a way where we'll get more next week, so we can sort of tidy up that when we have our next part. And here's the interesting thing about a couple weeks after that, to just sort of do some administrative stuff. So the show's going to drop on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So next week we'll have to announce when we'll be doing this show, because look, New Year's Eve, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be in. I'm not going anywhere. I got nowhere to be. Even if there was no pandemic, I would be watching Star Trek Discovery that night. So, no. Because I have 2 small children, I'm going to be doing FaceTime with Santa, figuring out a lot of things, some last minute.
Putting together toys and stuff, yeah.
So we'll figure that out. But we'll be back on Thursday, this sort of afternoon, Pacific time, evening, East Coast time, next Thursday, and we'll let you know when to find. And then when we get into January 7th, the season's over already. It will be, in January. And I don't think they shot any of Picard season 2. I don't think they've shot anything else. So that'll probably be when I drag myself to Lower Decks and I actually try to watch it.
Me
You
too. Yeah, I'm saving it for when there's no Star Trek on, and I'm dying for some new Star Trek. That's what I'm saving it for.
Yeah, and it's 2021 might actually have no new Star Trek for the entire year because. Go ahead.
I also just want to say this has nothing to do with Star Trek, but we paid for the commercial-free CBS All Access, and there were 2 commercial breaks in my viewing, and so CBS, I'm canceling you if you don't have some new Star Trek on it. So get some Star Trek action happening. If we have to go through all of 2021 without Star Trek, there will be no CBS All Access in my house.
Yeah. And when it comes to paying extra for the
no commercials,
here's what I say to that. Oh, must be nice. I watch commercials every time. But
I know. Well, I know the account you're using. I
have no idea what you're talking about.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I didn't even mean to say that, but my girlfriend has a girlfriend. She has a paid one, and it still gave me 7 minutes of commercials, and I timed them because I was that mad.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say to CBS All Access, soon to be Paramount Plus. Disney Plus doesn't have any commercials. You think about that.
Not in Area 1.
Yeah. By the way, Peacock has commercials, but you know what? If you want to sit through the commercials, Peacock's free. So I'll take it. Yeah. So, I think that's a fair trade.
Yeah, free. I agree.
I'll watch commercials every 8 minutes, like on a regular TV show. Anyway,
okay, yeah, you're right. No. I was going to say IMDb. You can watch all the old movies and TV shows that you want, but they do have commercials, and that's okay because I can watch Laverne and Shirley, and I have never seen Laverne and Shirley without a commercial. So hey, it's fine for me. But this,
no, it's jarring actually when you watch like an old sitcom or something and there aren't commercials. You're
right.
Oh, we're right back to Lenny and Squiggy walking in.
Yeah. Oh, you Lenny.
That was. I thought that Michael McKean had a very nice tribute on his Twitter.
Wasn't it beautiful? That was so beautiful.
Yeah. So, all right. Okay, so we have to do the My So-Called Life after show. We have to do the Laverne and Shirley after show.
Can we just relive our childhoods? Let's just do all of the shows that we grew up watching.
Yeah. Look, if I could find it, I would actually take the old Droids animated series from 1985 that had Sir Anthony Daniels as the voice of C-3PO. I loved it as a kid, and it is just not out there.
I have no memory of that whatsoever.
Because you're not old like I am. I'm 44. So
I'm older than you, Boo Boo.
No, that's not true.
It is true.
I don't know. Am I allowed to say a phrase that rhymes that they say about
Black don't crack? Yeah, it is true. Black don't crack because I'm older than you and I look like this. Thank you.
Well, so now we know that Nikki is also possibly from the same species as Guinan. So we've learned so much in this episode. I did want to circle back, because they didn't ignore the ongoing storyline entirely. Adira putting together, sort of this algorithm. It's a brief moment, but there is sort of Stamets is like, no, dum-dum, you left it on pause.
Right.
But you can see that, and by the way, I did almost do it. I did almost call her, and I just did it now. I just admit that it can be difficult to do that. So maybe that's why they made the point, but Adira just really being so hard on themselves about the fact that it's like, I wasted a lot of our time. And Stamets is like, Stamets was not particularly cuddly in season 1, but when it comes to Adira, I really do like seeing this side of him,
He does have this sweetness about him when it comes to them, and I appreciate that. I think it's because he sees himself in them, and so and wants to sort of be supportive in that way. And I really like that we have a teenager in the because it really does harken back to TNG and having. I know people hated Wesley Crusher. I did not.
I
I
I
am a, I am a
look, I was young enough when that show aired that I was biased, but because my mom didn't like him, and I did not like the character. I did not think he was well written in the first season, and I never came back on him.
That's
I
what she
do
said. Sorry.
like Will Wheaton as like a sort of an internet figure, and like sort of talking, and he does the sort of the after show, the Ready Room that they do on CBS All Access.
Mhm.
So I like Will Wheaton. I'm still not a number one Wesley
So
Crusher.
I was a Wesley Crusher stan, still am. And one of the things that was really awesome for me, damn it, Wesley.
Shut up, Wesley.
Shut
That's
up,
a
Wesley.
shut up,
Shut
Wesley.
up, Wesley. The one of the but what I like about Adira, because for me, Wesley Crusher was one of the ways like could fantasize myself entering the story of the next generation,
Sure.
because I myself was that age, and so it was like, or I don't know how old I was, but still, like he
No,
was a
but
young
it's
kid.
yeah,
And I love that this show has a young person in it for
it's
young people, like
it's
that.
accessible.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I was a kid. Obviously, if I'm doing this Star Trek show, maybe I grew up. I didn't have as many friends as I could have. I read a lot of comics, and in the X-Men, I always identified with Kitty Pryde because she was the young character
Mm-hmm.
that was like, oh, look, she gets to go to space and hang out, and like
Mm-hmm.
Wolverine's like her surrogate dad, and like
Yeah.
and yeah, and look, they did that with the animated series with Jubilee. She kind of fulfilled that role, and I think it's smart to have those characters. I mean, in the 70s, Doctor Who did that with Adric, and it's sort of like if you're trying to get kids to feel like, yeah, I this can be for me too, but then you have the mixed message because Tilly's got a potty mouth.
Tilly's got a mouth.
She's definitely got a mouth.
I don't think it's for kids. I think it's for so that parents can watch it with their teenager children.
Yeah,
I don't think the show, like, I mean, I like, if I had kids your age, they would not be watching the show.
yeah.
But like, you watch it with your teenage kids who are being, snarky little, little whatnots, like Adira can be a little moody, like, so it's sort of a great way for parents of teenagers
Yeah,
to
like a
watch
perfect
it
example would be that I was 11 when TNG premiered, and I definitely watched it definitely with my mom. Often with my mom and my dad, we would all watch it, and yeah, and I think that this would fulfill that role. Sort of the sensibility that I had at 11, I would be able to watch a show that is, look, there's definitely some violence and the potty mouth and whatnot, but I don't think it's, look, I'd rather my kid watch this than a UFC match, so.
Yeah, and also, I mean, also the standards were like when we were teenagers, people weren't saying the word ass on television. People didn't use the word bitch on television. Like the standards were much more strict in terms of the language you could use. So kids nowadays are just used to seeing, like there's just so much more cussing on television anyway. So
yeah. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about. Sort of, I like that we got this Stamets Adira stuff, but Adira does decode at least part of this message. And I thought that just Saru, especially when he's rewatching it by himself after everybody leaves, the fact that a Kelpian left this message, just, because he's definitely perked up when talk of Kelpians has happened since they've been in the 31st century.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that little bit of a message that we did see them show to, no, actually they didn't show it to the Admiral. That was the whole thing that was like, Saru taking the Admiral's advice, and like, let's get a little bit more before we talk to him about this.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on all that?
I actually felt like there was a really interesting perspective in terms of the continuum of the Kelpians in this episode, because we got to see them in the mirror universe, still being enslaved, still being preyed upon. And then we see, we know the evolution of the Kelpians. We know that they can become like Saru, and then we get to see the future of the Kelpians in this distress message, and it almost like it's really kind of exciting to wonder. Like I thought it was really interesting that Burnham said those marks on her forehead must be burn marks from radiation. But
Yeah.
the thing is, we don't know, because we know that the Kelpians evolve, right? And they can make rapid evolvements. Like, what is that? Like, what is that? That may not be radiation.
Yeah, and that was what I wanted to call attention to. I think Saru, maybe he doesn't know exactly what that is, but I think he thinks that that's not radiation.
Yeah,
So I think that's part of his fascination with it. And then, look, there's the fact that this message, I think they said it's from 100 years ago, so there's a lot to sort of unpack there. I feel like, this was the first few minutes of this episode. This is part 1 of Terra Firma. I think we'll finally we'll advance that storyline right at the end of next week. And
I agree.
Then let's see, then we have episodes 11, 12, and 13. So in time for, by the way, episode 12, once again, directed by number 1, Jonathan Frakes. So,
that also made me happy about the last week's episode was that he was like, you could feel it when he directs. You can feel the difference.
And by the way, who did LeVar Burton piss off that he still hasn't directed one? Because
ain't got none of them, right?
Yeah, he directed a lot of TNG, and he's also directed other episodic television. So somebody, I think, is a little too full of his Reading Rainbow. No, I hope that I hope that they bring LeVar Burton back. And
he's like, do you have a theme song and a legendary My Name Is Kunta Kinte moment? No, you don't. So
and an action figure with a really cool accessory.
Right. I'm just saying, I lost mine though.
Yeah, well, very excited to see where the season goes, and we'll talk more about Georgiou's storyline. I think we're going to have a really good sense for where she is. I don't want her to go anywhere. I hope she's around after next week.
Me too.
We'll talk about it then. Nikki, where can people keep in touch with you if they want to keep talking Star Trek?
You can keep talking Star Trek with me at Nikki Bailey _ on all of the social medias except Snapchat, because I don't get it. Mm-hmm. And you can also find me at NikkiBaileyComedy.com.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Just a final thought. Michael B says the burn was 100 years ago. The burn was actually 200 years ago, according to Book in the season premiere. So maybe the ship came in contact with the being.
Book said 150 years.
Oh, okay. So maybe he was just estimating. So you know what, Michael B, I don't want to dismiss your comment. Maybe the ship came in contact with a being that discovered they were after the crystal and decided to take the Federation out. We could really get some more insight there. I love ending on that. That's like, our show doesn't usually have a cliffhanger, but I think that's
but now we do. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Well, Nikki, thank you so much. And we will see everybody next Thursday at 3 Pacific. Next Friday at 3 Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. But until then, live long
and prosper.